Hi, everyone. Good morning or evening. Not sure where in the world you are. I would love to know in the chat. Please let me know where you are in the world. It is bright and early here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin today. And I am so thrilled to be talking to you about online community leadership. This topic is near and dear to my heart, and it's vital to the work of community builders. I have, through my career, coached, advised, trained hundreds of community managers, community leaders. And one of the really big gaps that I see is in leadership capacity, not only for individuals, but also leadership for the community as a whole. So yes, I see people in Taipei. Just take a break and say hello to everybody. Morning from Austin, Texas. Hi, Sean. Manila. Hi, Hannah. Moscow. Wow. Fellow Milwaukeean. Hey, Drew. London, Brazil. This is amazing. Germany. Oh my goodness. At a time like we are in right now, it's so heartwarming and honestly energizing to know that there's people from all over the world doing this work. Our work has enormous ripple effects. So I am just, again, so excited to be talking about leadership with you today. So what I will be discussing is so important to me because what I'm seeing in the world right now is a lack of good leadership. And right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, a global pandemic, and we need clear online leadership. What that looks like online is different than what it might look like offline. And all of us have the ability, the capacity to step into leadership roles. But what I see in the world happening over and over and over again is a two-part problem, which is one, that people who could be incredible online community leaders keep themselves backstage. They, will keep themselves in the shadow of other people, will, always be elevating other people. Of course, that's important to do. Not saying it isn't important to do, but as a leader, you also have the ability to step up yourself, have your voice be heard, and also organize other people's voices as well. So I'm seeing that happening. So these incredible leaders holding themselves back. And then on the other hand, I'm seeing these very subpar leaders stepping up, being very loud voices. You might see this in your communities, like some of the loudest voices are oftentimes not the greatest to be leading things. Not always the case, but we need more and more of these quieter voices to be stepping up. So I want to invite you through this talk today to be thinking about where are your strengths and where might there be gaps, not weaknesses necessarily, but gaps where you can be investing in yourself as a leader, or identifying different people in your communities who can step up into leadership roles. So we will be talking about, Brian says, shots fired. Well, yes. So let's get started. All right. So what I'm going to talk about today are the 5 roles that are critical to have in community leadership. You personally, individually, do not need to be all of these 5 things all of the time. What you do need is to ensure that all 5 of these roles are being filled by someone at all times. So these roles are gatekeeper, peacekeeper, welcomer, value deliverer, and advocate. And I will go into depth on all of these right now. So gatekeeper. A gatekeeper is someone who makes sure that the right people are inside the community and that the people who are not right for the community stay outside of the community. They maintain the boundary between who belongs and who doesn't. This is not about exclusion for the purposes of exclusion. It's about exclusion for the purposes of your purpose, really your community purpose, and maintaining that and ensuring that the right people are in the digital room. So this is actually quite a bit about marketing and how you position the value of your community so that the right people come in and that you keep people who are not attracted to your community's purpose out. So there are 2 major responsibilities of a gatekeeping community leader. One is that they have to communicate the boundaries for the community. So make it very, very clear exactly when people actually join the community, that they're actually in it and not that everyone can be inside of the community at all times. No boundary, no community. And then second, they have to establish and lead new gatekeepers. So you as an individual cannot be the only gatekeeper in your online community. If you do, and your goal is growth, you will eventually burn out. So one of the things that is really critical as part of this role is actually finding other people who can take on this role alongside you to ensure that, other people can flag things in your community, other people can step up alongside you and make sure that the gate is maintained, that the right people are in and the wrong people leave. And so you obviously, we can see this on a really large scale right now. We're seeing it on really huge platforms like Facebook, which has often called itself a community of, however many billion people. But if you let the wrong people say things or do things that do not abide by the community guidelines, then you're not doing your job as a gatekeeper of a community. So just going to leave that there. There might be some things going on globally right now that's prompting me to bring that up. The second role is Peacekeeper, and this is about conflict and making sure that any conflict that happens in your community gets dealt with so that it doesn't escalate into harm to your members. So one of the things that's important to do is ensure that the inside of your community is safe enough for people to participate. Conflict is inevitable, but harm is not inevitable. So this is a really difficult balance, and I want to say that there's no right and wrong about this. It's an emerging role because what is giving up power and giving up control to your community can also be seen as irresponsible at times. Like, you should actually take more control. And then there are other times where you're taking control and leading everyone really, or managing everyone, I should say, really specifically, is actually more like counterproductive coddling. And that doesn't help communities either. So this is not black and white. It's a spectrum, and this has to constantly be assessed and actually just figure out what the exact conflict is, and you'll have to assess it on a case-by-case basis. And yeah, that doesn't necessarily work at scale. It doesn't. And one of the things I want to say about that is that scale is not more important than your member safety. It's not. We have seen so much go wrong online. And if your major goal is scale over people's safety, and that you care more about growth than about keeping the peace and about making progress toward your community's purpose, we should talk. we should get you right. So here are, guidelines obviously are important. You need guidelines for your online community, but how do you actually use them as an active tool? So there's really 4 ways to use them. First, obviously, establish and make the rules or the guidelines known. If they're not known or not seen, if they're not part of the onboarding process, how are you going to hold people accountable to them? So that has to be part of the onboarding. Second, intention of your members does not matter. The impact matters. So I actually have a story in talking with people at Twitch, Bobby Scar-Newman and Marcus Graham. They are some of the community leaders over at Twitch, and they have 24/7. Obviously, they have to be monitoring these live feeds at all times. A lot of it's done through machine learning, but it can't all be done through machine learning. And one of the streamers at one point had used a racial slur to refer to his friend, and he was a white male. And his friend said he was not offended, and he said he didn't mean the racial slur negatively, but it does not matter because it's against the community guidelines. His intention does not matter. His impact matters. So people watching that stream could have been hurt by that racial slur. And so you have to enforce that no matter what the intention is. And this person was one of the top streamers, and they got banned for several weeks and then had a period where they had to reflect on what happened and then come back from there. So you cannot selectively enforce these guidelines based on favoritism or nepotism. And again, we see this at really large platforms happening right now, Facebook and Twitter. So if you want to build a community, don't do that. Third, attentive moderators or elders, so not necessarily moderators as we might call them in a more online community specific context, but elders or leaders in your community have to be attentive to help you enforce those guidelines. So it can't just necessarily be you, but also other leaders in the community who are helping you identify issues that might be happening. And then finally, allowing members to return after a period of reflection. So that Twitch example I gave, for instance, they let that member come back. It's not all or nothing. It's not black and white. It's if you still want to be part of this after the consequences that you have faced, you will have to act differently. Are you ready to do that? If so, come back. And in that case, we have people who can actually grow together. So it's not just all or nothing, as I mentioned. John said he can't stop staring at my earrings. These are handmade in Portland. I love these earrings too. All right. So I will leave this particular point with this quote from Sarah Schulman, who's the author of Conflict is Not Abuse. And she says, conflict, after all, is rooted in difference, and people are and always will be different. So conflict will happen in your community. It's not if, it's when. And having a clear process for dealing with it is vital. And John had just asked, how long is the period of reflection? How long should you have people wait? Highly dependent on what has happened. And so the degree of severity of the infraction, how many times they have committed a similar infraction in the community, and also, their tone in like actually responding and taking responsibility for that. So there are certainly cases where that period of reflection is not doesn't help them grow and they don't come back, and that should be right. That's your goal as a gatekeeper, is to keep the right people in and make sure the wrong people are not staying in the community. All right. So the next role is welcomer. Welcomes are critical to community. And this role is really about making sure that people feel heard and seen right away in your community. And this is an area of major growth in communities that, again, this is one of those things people really want to scale. They want to create automated welcome everything. But having that personal touch in the welcoming process makes a world of a difference. So how do we actually welcome people in our online communities? What I find to be most effective is really taking what works offline, surprise, surprise, and applying it to the online context. So when you enter a meetup, for instance, where you don't know anyone, if someone comes up to you and notices when you arrive, so this is number one, notice when someone arrives, it makes such a difference to your comfort levels. I remember showing up at my first community manager meetup many years ago now, and my now friend Megan walked up to me and said, "Oh, you must be Carrie. You're here. I saw you on the RSVP list." And that made me really tense to just finally feeling like, oh, I might actually belong here. Just a little tiny detail like that can make a world of a difference. Second, connect to, speak with, and offer guidance to newcomers if they need it. So obviously, again, here, don't be coddling of people. Let them roam, let them be free, but check in with them when they first join and make sure that they have any guidance that they might need. Proactively reach out to them if they're not participating in the early days of their membership to see what might be stopping them or what's missing. Then facilitate a connection to other participants. So this is one of the components of being a leader that is really about, not about you, but about helping create connections between members in the community so that you can scale over time. This is one of the things that can scale in a community. And then finally, offer guidance on how to navigate the present experience. So what we're really trying to do with a welcome is reduce uncertainty. Human beings hate uncertainty. I hate uncertainty. So our role here is to reduce it as much as possible without making everything really rigid and boring, I guess is a good way to talk about that. And just like the Peacekeeper role, this is not black and white. So finding and experimenting with what works for you in the welcome process can be is vital, because it's important that you're not just copy pasting what another community is doing, for instance. The next role is value deliverer. So as a community builder, it is your job to deliver the promised value that you told people they would get when they first joined. So this is based on research, the top values that members seek when they go to join an online community. These are 1, learning new skills, behaviors, or information. 2, social connection, so creating new friendships, relationships, business contacts. 3, personal growth, so growing in some way individually. Or, of course, fun and entertainment. This is actually one of the lower reasons on the list why people seek online community, but it's obviously, I mean, look around at much of Reddit or Imager. This is certainly a reason that people join online communities as well. So you can bring all of these values to members in different ways through your work, but whatever you're promising them through your landing pages or through your welcome materials, you need to make sure that they feel like you're delivering on that. You're accountable to giving them what you promised. So you can do this through surveys to say, you know, like if you promise social connection, you can do a survey several weeks after they join and ask, have you made a friend or have you created any relationships? Have you met outside the platform? And then that way, again, like you are creating an accountability for yourself so that you can improve over time. The central question to be asking is, what will participants get out of this experience, this community experience that enriches them? I often hear people asking, how do I get people to participate? How do I motivate people to participate? I want to always reframe this question anytime someone asks it, which the reframe is, what will participants get out of this experience that enriches them? You can't get people to do anything. That's manipulation or coercion. What you can do is make sure that the experience is valuable to them. And that is your job, essentially, as a leader. And the final role is advocate. So you are the advocate for your members back to your internal organization. If you're a brand community builder, you are also, if you're building a hobby community, you are the advocate for your members to other people in the industry, to any contacts that you might have outside of the community. And this role often is just a function of listening. So obviously, you know, a lot of people preach listening. It's really important, but truly listening is one of the things often missing in communities, where we're often trying to be the savior for our members, create something. We hear that they have a need and we immediately rush to solve that need. Sometimes people just want to be heard, and there's actually a deeper need underlying that. So making sure that you're not just rushing to be the creative savior for your members, but actually hearing what their deeper needs are, and then figuring out creative solutions, perhaps even co-creating creative solutions alongside them. So this is something that countless organizations do. Airbnb did it. You know, they have these global summits where they bring their top hosts together. Obviously right now, the current situation, this is not happening, but their product managers actually come out to these summits, interview members, and live mock-up changes to the platform based on things that they hear from members right then and there. And if you as a community manager can't promise that you will listen and make change based on what you're hearing, you have a job-threatening issue on your hands. So again, talk to me. I coach people through this issue a lot, saying like, obviously I want to listen. I'm the community manager. I care about this, but how do I make sure that my organization hears what I'm saying? That's something I can certainly help you with. And this is a solvable problem, but it is a problem, and it's a leadership issue internally inside of your organization. So I just want you to reflect. I covered a lot very quickly. I'm talking very fast because I don't have a ton of time in this particular talk. But which of these are your strengths and which are your weaknesses? And which do you need to focus on, and which can you lean into even more? Are you a great gatekeeper, but maybe you need to get better at being an advocate? Are you a great welcomer, but the value that people are getting is not really clear at this point? Really focus in on, you know, how to balance these out. And as I mentioned in several of these, this is not black and white. It's a constantly emerging thing. Just checking in with yourself to see where you might be able to strengthen your work can really just supercharge all of your efforts. So if you got something out of this talk, and I really hope that you did, I would love to invite you to check out my book that's coming out on June 9th. I can't believe it. I actually have my hard copies here. I do cover leadership. This book is co-written with myself and Charles Vogel, who is the author of The Art of Community. We talk about community leadership. We talk about how to show that your community is driving value so that your internal organization actually hears you. We talk about how to create safety inside of online communities. So I would love to invite you to get a pre-sale copy of the book. getting that on Amazon is a huge support to authors. So I would really appreciate that. And I also would love to stay in touch with you. So you can subscribe to my newsletter. I put out a newsletter about every 2 weeks. You can email me at any point, find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever platform works for you. I'm on all of them except Facebook. And yeah, I would just love, love, love to stay in touch. So let's move on to Q&A. Only have 5 minutes, so I want to cover everything I can here. So questions. There was a poll that I did not realize was happening. I can't see the results, but so let's see. Francisco asks, inspired by the poll created by Mac, do you think that in a community we must have these roles divided by different people, or can it be done by a one-man band show? Both. You can fill all these roles. Obviously, it's hard for one person to be all things to all people. It's always, if you want to achieve scale over time, you will have to delegate these responsibilities out and find people who can do this alongside you, or create automations for some of them and continue to be more personal on things like the welcoming and things like that. So yeah, it can be done by one person. I mean, I've led online communities that are just me as the leader, and I do all these roles. It can also be maddening, so I want to warn you of that. All right. Nicholas asked, how do you deal with all the gray areas in rules? Most trouble we have is not with the clear cases, but with edge cases. Any advice? That's a fantastic question. And what I've noticed is that most cases are edge cases. So it's like, what is an edge case? I find that every infraction of rules is its own, things are often not clear cut. So what I've seen really work especially for large communities, is to have a tiered process. So there are obviously infractions that are, like using certain words that might, be in your profanity filters, things like that. That's automated as it goes through an automated system. Those things automatically get moderated or just go through a really quick human filtering. But as things go up, you have more and more escalation. I've actually seen crisis response teams in some cases where people actually will meet to talk about specific members and specific issues that have happened. Now, this is what I'm talking about right now. This specific example was a community of 3 million. So obviously that's not going to work, or that's not really necessary for a community of 30. I think for as long as you can, try to do this on a case-by-case basis and hire moderators as soon as it starts to become out of hand and you realize that you're spending more time moderating, less time delivering value to your members. So yeah, fantastic question. Let's see. There's lots of questions here. Laura asked, how do you track activity in community? Do you use any tools for alerts mentions? This is highly platform specific. There's no one answer to this. So whatever platform you might be using, Laura, see what automations they might have. They might have a Zapier integration where you can create something that works with whatever systems you use internally. The one thing I will say is, in whatever way you can, try to integrate with the software that your company already is using or your organization is already using. Leslie asked, can we get the book at bookshop.org? Yes, you can. Yes, you can get it at bookshop.org. So I think that's a pretty clear-cut answer. So just search for Building Brand Communities on bookshop.org, and that way you support indie bookstores. Please do that. Lindsay says, witnessing friendships blossom from communities I've helped manage is one of the greatest joys I experience as a community manager. Absolutely. And so one of the things that we can do to create that as leaders is to give people permission and then step back out of whatever activity might be happening. So whether that's a Zoom breakout room, whether it is a small subgroup or committee where people can come together. One of the things that you can do, obviously, is like help people connect through their existing social media profiles. But I always like to keep people within the safe little nest of the community whenever I possibly can. So with whatever platform functionality you might have, where you can create subgroups and small groups, the more likely it is that will happen, that people will actually form friendships and deep relationships. We call that the campfire principle in the book, actually. Any other questions? We got 1 minute. Yes, Victoria says impact over intention. Yes, I cannot emphasize that enough. Okay, I think that, can you tell us an embarrassing story about Evan Hamilton asking for a friend? I assume you're asking about Evan Hamilton, Brian. No, I will not do that to Evan. Evan Hamilton's incredible. He is the head of community at Reddit, and I used to work with him at CMX, and I will not embarrass him. Let's see. How do you ask the community to help out with these roles without feeling like they're working for free? Francisco asks. Brian says boo, sorry. So Francisco, in some cases, you are asking the community to work for free. So don't do that. Especially for for-profit organizations, this is a very fine line. Make sure that you have, if you're with a for-profit company, you have a legal counsel and talk with them about any time you are asking for volunteers. That is the best possible advice I can give, the safest possible advice I can give. I am not a lawyer. For nonprofits, this is much more open. You can have people take on volunteer roles, and that's actually like fine with the organization structure at hand. Otherwise, it can be seen as exploitative, and please don't do that to people. The world doesn't need that right now. All right, it is 10:30. Thank you so much for attending this talk. I hope you all learned something from it, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day here at the ComChat Summit. I know I had a lot of fun presenting to you. Keep in touch. All right, bye everyone.